Hello and welcome to a special Gamers Without Borders review podcast. This is Test Zero, and with me is my friend from across the pond, Oi from Oimon Gaming.
Hi guys.
And today we're going to talk about something that makes both of us very happy. A new Metroid game.
Whee!
Now, the term once in a blue moon is thrown around a lot of these days.
Well, yes. A little bit.
But this is the first new Metroid game in 7 years, because Federation Force doesn't fucking count.
Yes.
This is Metroid Samus Returns, and the big question is, was it worth the wait?
Ooh, that is a very big question. Yeah, we'll approach that one slowly, cautiously, like a wild animal, I think. We'll have to stand downwind of it first, and then sneak up on it through the tall grass. Gonna make it sound like a Pokemon. Anyway,
you kind of lost the metaphor at that point.
Yeah, I kind of like I should go with this. No, bail, dude, bail. No, I can't. I'm committed. I'm in now. I'm in there. Anyway, yes, let's keep going.
So yeah, initial thoughts on it. I thought it was perfectly fine. When you start off the game, it drops you right into it. The intro is great. The intro where they talk about the Federation and everything. And the research.
It does a good job of like setting up the story. You know, it pretty much summarizes everything that's happened in the Metroid universe up until that point. Summarizing not just the events of Metroid 1, but also what had happened before Metroid 1 with the discovery of the Metroids and all that other stuff. And then the ultimate decision to have them all destroyed because of the danger they potentially pose. And it looked really good too. I mean, the 3D graphics. The 3D graphics are nice, but they're not necessary.
Yeah, they're really not necessary. I picked up a 3DS specifically for this game, and I picked up the new Metroid one, and I use the 3D occasionally, but for some reason, this is my first 3DS, and my regular DS broke a while ago, so I've considerably upgraded. I basically went from a GBA to a 3DS. And for some reason, my glasses throw off the automatic detection on the 3D.
Oh, do they? Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things that only happens in the new 3DS.
The new 3DS, it has this feature where it does eye tracking, so it automatically adjusts the angle of the 3D depending on where your head is, which is a cool idea, but if something like your glasses can throw it off, that really kind of sucks.
I don't wear glasses, so I can't comment on that. I've never had that problem. So yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that was a thing with the 3DS. Anyway, that's slightly off topic.
But Samus Returns is a regular 3DS game, so it doesn't use the ZL or ZR, which those could have probably helped in this case. Because one of my biggest problems, I think the biggest problem that I have with this game is that the way it's controlled could be a bit more clean.
Yeah, the controls are fine. And
the controls are fine enough, but they could be better. Mostly the fact that you activate the spider ball and missiles by holding the button down. I really think it could have helped if that was a toggle, or at least you can have the option to either toggle it or hold it down. Because I know stuff like Fusion had that.
Did Fusion have... No, Fusion wasn't toggle. Fusion was hold the button down. I mean, it might have had it in the options that you could toggle.
Yeah, exactly. Put it in the options where you could choose to either toggle it or hold it down, because that's how it worked in the original Metroid 2, where you press the button to activate and press it again to turn it off.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's because it was on the select button, and you couldn't really hold the select button whilst you were trying to battle a friggin' Metroid, so that wouldn't have been any good. But
I think the option to do that would have been perfectly fine.
Yeah,
even if they didn't want to dedicate to using that style of control, they could give you the choice of it. But there's something I heard about the way Japanese people design games, that they design games to have a specific experience. They're not big fans of options. They're fans of, here's what we've presented for you, enjoy it as is.
Yeah, that is actually one of the differences between Japanese design and American design. Americans are all about how many options can we do, and Japanese people are like, no, we've got this thing. You are going to play it the way we want you to play it. That's it. That's what it comes down to. But, the control system, it works. It's not, terrible or bad. There is a small period of adjustment, but it's kind of the same with any game you play on, really, more than anything else.
Yeah.
I think the thing that took me the longest to get a hold of was the parry system. That took me not a huge amount of time, but it took me a couple of areas before I really got the hang of that.
Yeah, but then once you get a hang of it, it does work really well. It helps you get through the enemies really quickly. But even the parry system itself has problems, mostly if you're trying to parry two enemies at the same time.
Yeah, that's annoying. I would say, I like the parry system. I think it's a nice thing that you can, deflect attacks. It is way, way overused.
Oh yeah, it's constantly every single enemy you encounter dashes at you, and you have to parry them. And then if two enemies dash at you at the same time, you can only parry one of them, and like you parry, and then if you do anything else, you aren't able to insta-kill them. If you do anything, if you move, if you aim in a slightly different direction, you can't insta-kill them. They'll just stand there stunned for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, you can still wail on them while they're stunned, so it's not like a big problem. But yeah, the parry system is just used too much. They should have kept the parry system, I think, for like maybe just the Metroids.
Well, like, I mean, either that or make the enemies like not use it as often.
Yeah, like the second an enemy shows up on screen, it does the this is an attack you need to parry.
Yeah, it does the little flash
instantly,
attack.
the second it sees you. And I mean, it is nice that it's advertised, so you know when you're supposed to parry, because there are some games where enemies don't necessarily advertise their attacks.
They don't telegraph their attacks at all. But here, it's like every single one you can do that.
But the problem with that is, of course, it kind of breaks the flow of the game. The fact that you have to stop every 5 friggin' seconds to parry an enemy that's going to attack you. I mean, later on, you kind of learn that, yeah, okay, you can kind of move past them if you're fast enough. And once you start getting the more advanced upgrades, especially like the screw attack.
The lightning armor really helps.
Yeah, the lightning armor helps. But yeah, the parry system is just overused. And it's not a bad system. It's just overused.
Yeah, they just do it way too damn much. Because I never found a reason to use the melee attack outside of countering.
Yeah, I don't think there is a reason to use it.
Actually, no, I did find one. The little swarms of enemies that you find that you normally have to use lightning armor to get through. If you activate lightning armor and use the parry attack, you can usually just wipe the whole thing out. Then they give you a shit ton of health and Aeon. Yeah,
they do usually. I mean, usually I just sort of wail on them with the beam. I didn't know you could parry those. I never tried.
No, you don't even parry them. You just melee attack them and they just vaporize.
I did. Oh no, I never tried that. That's interesting. Yeah, just in general, I think the game does feel very good. Actually, you know, with the exception of the parry thing, which slows you down, the game does flow very good. Samus moves at quite a speed, actually.
Yeah, Samus runs very well. I mean, aiming, I would have probably preferred something almost like Shadow Complex, where you can aim with the right stick and then shoot, but the right stick is unique, I believe, to the new 3DS.
Yeah, I think that was probably why they just went with the button aiming on it, which, I mean, it works. You know, it's not a big issue. You know, you sort of shore up your stance and then you can aim specifically.
So it's almost like Metroid Prime in that regard, where if you want to do direct aiming, you have to stand still.
Yeah, it is actually, kind of. So, I mean, yeah, it works. Samus moves very quickly. I will say her fast speed, it's one of the things that I think is why they changed the scale of the map. Because Samus moves quite faster and she's a lot more fluid, I think that's why all rooms are, like, bigger than they were before, which is one of the things I noticed, because like a room in Metroid 2, the original game, that would have been just like a 1x1 room, or maybe if it's just like a tall shaft or something, there's just one across. Those are now like 2 across, and like one screen now takes up 2 blocks on the map, and it's weird with the scale because like I got so lost so easily in this.
Well, also the Metroid 2, the Samus herself is larger on screen in that game, so the rooms themselves are much tinier to begin with.
Yeah, she's kind of big in this one, to be perfectly honest. You compare that to, like, say, I don't know, Metroid 3? It's certainly bigger than Metroid 1, but then I think Metroid 1 was probably the time when she was the smallest.
Yeah.
Thinking about it. But yeah, the scale just does feel off compared to the original game. It's like they decided to make everything feel bigger, or for some reason. I'm not sure why.
Obviously, we're going to be making a lot of comparisons between the original game and, of course, AM2R. And we're not going to go into too much detail here because we're going to be doing a separate podcast where we talk about just specifically comparing the two. If we do compare this game to the original Metroid 2, a lot of the areas seem to only be vague representations of the originals.
Yeah,
it's very difficult to actually see. Like, you'll make your way halfway through the area before you realize, oh wait, this is where I'm supposed to be right now. Because both of us have played Metroid 2 to death. We've played. We know the games backward and forwards. It's probably the one that I know the most is Metroid 2. And even some of these areas are like, wait, where am I supposed to be right now? Oh, I'm in this sort of area.
Yeah, I mean, it is a weird thing. I think it's not just because the scale are off, but they have, like, changed quite a lot of the areas. I mean, I think I'd pretty much completed all of the first sort of temple area before I sort of looked at the map and realized, oh, that's the rooms that I was in. Oh, that explains what that is. And it was only after I'd seen everything that I was able to sort of tie the two games together. But that was just in Area 1. When you move on to like Areas 2 and 3 and beyond, it really does start to diverge and change, and you start getting to the point where you don't recognize anything. And, it's not that that's necessarily bad. It is a remake, and if they're changing the layouts of the areas, I suppose that's to be expected, but I kind of feel like they maybe change it too much.
Well, I mean, it's not like the original design was completely sacrosanct, like they couldn't change anything about it. They were trying to update it. They're trying to make it less linear, which, I mean, even still, this game is fairly linear for a Metroid game. The only part where it gets non-linear is when you backtrack to get all the items again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just a consequence of Metroid 2 being Metroid 2. Metroid 2 was just a naturally linear game because, I mean, in Metroid 1, it's that, or any of the other Metroid games really, it's just the items you collect allow you to progress forward. In this, it's the items you collect allow you to find the Metroids that you can kill in order to progress forward.
Yeah.
And because of that little extra step of having to kill the Metroids, that makes it a very linear game. You move from the starting area to Area 1, Area 2, Area 3 in a very linear path.
Yeah, which, I mean, I think it's a good point to talk about how the Chozo seals in this game.
Yeah.
What the hell? From a lore standpoint, this makes no goddamn sense.
Yeah, I know. It's like something they added in purely for the sake of a game.
It's a video game, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you need to kill X number of Metroids. I have been racking my brain to try to come up with some kind of lore-based explanation for that, and my only thought is that they specifically wanted to seal away the Metroids so that they couldn't be killed because of the X-Parasite. And the idea of it is that if the Chozo changed their mind and wanted the Metroids destroyed, only something Chozo-related would be able to do that, and so it would be able to access the statue and all that stuff because of Samus's Chozo armor, of course.
But then, of course, you have the fact that the Chozo seal reduces the acid in the room. By the way, spoilers for Metroid Fusion, by the way.
Oh, God, well, yeah.
Yeah, well, we're going to try to avoid spoilers for this game until the end of the podcast, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, if we're spoiling spoilers for Metroid 4, I think that's okay. There will be some for the most part, we could say a lot of stuff that isn't spoilers about Samus Returns.
Yeah, because it does very much follow the plot of Metroid 2, which there isn't too much to it, but there are a few twists, so...
Yeah, there are a few small changes that do come in between the original Metroid 2 and Samus Returns, and we will try to keep those to, as you say, at the end of the podcast. But yeah, the statues, they literally are just a game mechanic. This is the thing, in my head, I had this kind of canon reason as to why the liquid in Metroid 2 drops. I mean, this is the thing. In the manual of the second game, that stuff is literally just called the liquid. It's not actually called like lava or acid. It's simply referred to as the liquid. So the fact that they make it this weird purple stuff, I guess I can kind of see, it does make a certain kind of sense because it wasn't labeled in the first game.
Right.
But in my head, the reason I always assumed, the earthquakes lower the liquid, allowing you to progress. Well, okay, the earthquakes seem awfully well timed.
Yeah, exactly. They seem to be related to whenever you kill the last Metroid, which, I mean, again, this was like, 1991? So you don't really even think about it in terms of, okay, how does this work? How does this work in terms of lore? It's a video game. Nobody gives a shit. But now, people care a lot more about storylines in games and making sure that things fit within the lore.
This is the thing. Even back when I first completed this game, it took me years to actually complete the game, by the way. Because, as you say, it came out in like 91, and I didn't get it for years until after it had come out. And then I didn't complete it for years after that. But even when I was first playing this, I was still trying to think up reasons and excuses for things in video games. Just like, gamer to the core over here, Something I've always kind of done is, the gears are always turning about why things happen or what's the reason for this and things like that. And the theory I came up with was that the Metroid Queen would sense when the other Metroids on the planet, which are technically her babies, if you think about it, it would sense when they died, and after X number had been killed, it would start sort of going into like a rage, and the Metroid Queen would like rampage. That would cause an earthquake that in turn would cause the water level to lower. Now, that was always sort of the headcanon excuse I had in my head, which made sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, and it makes sense from a lore standpoint. It makes sense from just like whatever you think the Metroid Queen would feel about this stuff, because she's a creature, but she would obviously have this connection to the children.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and it doesn't go against what you would tend to think about with these creatures. But then when you bring in these Chozo seals, which, I mean, I know the Chozo were powerful and very intelligent, but they're not fucking psychic.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Metroid Prime, they do kind of start seeing the future. I know what you're saying. That
even still,
they're supposed to be like this wise old ancient race. They're not fucking gods. Okay, they're just very technologically advanced. They can't, I don't know, maybe in some weird way they saw the future that this was supposed to happen or something like that, but they wouldn't want it to happen because they created the Metroids to stop
they created them. It sort of goes against what happens in Fusion, because Fusion was supposed to be this huge twist where your actions in Metroid 2, which you believed to be the right thing to do at the time, destroy the Metroids, actually ends up releasing this even worse threat to the galaxy, which is exactly the kind of thing you want to see. You want to see your actions you think have one effect, but they end up having another. That's a great way of writing a story like this, especially if it's a game where the player is just kind of doing stuff where they follow these orders just because they want to complete the game. That's the purpose of Metroid 2, is to destroy the Metroids. Which, I mean, you don't think of that, well, should I really do it? Though if you don't do that, you don't get to play the game. But that's what made something like BioShock so brilliant. The fact that you're doing these actions just as a video game, but just like as a video game action, but then it turns out it wasn't the right thing to do at the time.
Spoiler alert for BioShock, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's another old game, for crying out loud. You know, it's not an issue. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense from a lore standpoint. And to be honest, it's kind of the only thing in the game that doesn't make sense from a lore standpoint. Yeah, I mean, for the most part, like the area designs, I know we sort of already talked about the areas, but the area designs themselves.
Well, the areas don't seem to have that much difference between them all, because you do sort of have this slow progression from the more ruin type to more technological when you get closer to the Queen, which I did like. I did like that slow aspect.
Yeah.
But I feel like the areas could have been a bit better differentiated as well.
Yeah, like one room to another, there won't really be much difference. You may notice like a difference in the theme of the area, but like one room to another, it all felt very samey, I will say. And to be honest, the same can be said of the general enemies as well. Like I felt
the enemies could have been a lot more diverse in this.
Yeah, because I felt like there were six different enemies, and you just
they went like the JRPG route in this game. They went the JRPG route where you encounter one that's one color, and then you encounter another one that acts exactly the same. He's just a slightly different color and more powerful.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of lazy. You know, there should be more diversity in the enemies. I mean, if you think about, like, say, Metroid 3, every single area, and sometimes even different areas within a larger area.
No, even Metroid 1.
Yeah.
You had different enemies that they were similar to each other. Like, they worked in slightly similar ways. So you had, like, this type of enemy, but it worked a different way. Like, you had the hopping ones, and you had the ones that went left, the zoomers. And you did sort of have that in Metroid 2. You had the ones that walked around the surfaces, and then you had the ones that went left and right, but they all had different graphics to them. But in this, you sort of have that. You have, like, the Mohiques, and then you have the spiked ones that roll up into balls, which, again, all the enemies in this are throwbacks to the original Metroid 2, which I did appreciate. But then they all tend to act very the same. They're just more powerful than each other.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say it's annoying, but it's a little kind of disheartening to see the lack of enemy variety. I mean, I felt like, I don't know, I didn't actually count, but I felt that there were like 6 different enemies in this game.
Yeah, about 6 or 7 of them.
And, you know, as you said, there's basically, you get the flying one, you get the rolling one, and you get the crawling one. And off the top of my head, that's about it.
And you have the ones that burrow down, which again are throwbacks to the ones that have the shield on top. You have to hit them with the wave beam. You have the 2 types of Mohiques, the ones that don't use electricity and the ones that do.
Yeah, that
the
is
ones
one of
that roll up and the ones that have the shield on the front. You can still shoot them in the shield. It just takes more shots.
Yeah. But yeah, I just didn't feel that there was a diversity of enemies. I mean, I can understand why there maybe wouldn't be that diverse number of enemies in Metroid, the original Metroid 2. It was a fucking Game Boy game. They had limits.
But even still, they had, even if they acted all the same, they still had different graphics for them. But then you have that one section, which was weird, where you encounter the completely new enemies that there's exactly one of them in it.
Yeah, that was weird. I think that's because they were like trying to diversify the enemies in Metroid 2, but they had limits because it was a Game Boy game.
It was a Game Boy
but
game. This doesn't have the same limitations. This is on the 3DS.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you can do way more complicated enemies on stuff like on the 3DS. I'm sure there's like Castlevania games that have a much wider variety of monsters.
Oh, Castlevania's always had a big variety of monsters. I mean, if you play something like Symphony of the Night, it's like, there are literally some, as you say, some enemies that only appear in one room. And, there's a lot of rooms in that game. So, yeah, I feel like the enemies themselves, whilst, what was there was serviceable enough, there was just not the variety you would expect from a modern game. And it's such a shame that they went that route. Of course, talking about the enemies, of course, brings us straight up to the Metroids themselves.
Which do really help this game. The Metroid fights in this game are spectacular.
And they're tough, too. Like, you will get your ass handed to you the first time you encounter.
The first time you fight each type, even the Alpha Metroids are, like, when you first start the game, the Alpha Metroids are a considerable threat before you learn their pattern.
Yeah, and
so the one thing that I do like about this is that it does really show why the Metroids are such a threat to the galaxy.
Yes. Yeah, that is true.
Because these are an absolute nightmare to defeat.
Yeah, it was kind of refreshing, actually, to play a Metroid game. I will say, I did feel the difficulty in general felt very good in the game.
Yeah, the difficulty spikes and the way that the difficulty progresses throughout the game, it feels very natural. And then I actually I finished my second playthrough, and I played through again on hard mode. And I compared hard mode to, it feels like when you first started playing the game, except you already played it once.
Right. So you still feel like you're still feeling that sense of weakness and that kind of vulnerability.
Yeah.
That's good. I haven't got around to playing hard mode yet, so I'm going to have to give that a go at some point. But yeah, the difficulty did feel good, and it definitely there's a big difficulty spike when you encounter the Metroids. And I like that the Metroids were challenging, but they still felt reasonably fair. Like, for one thing I would say that I don't like about the Metroids is also a problem with the original Metroid 2, is that you fight the alphas and the gammas way too much.
Yeah,
those fights
there's
get
just
repetitive.
way too damn many of them.
I mean, they do try to mix it up by having
you fight like two different types of gammas, like ones that are like more red and the ones that are blue, which are like they have different,
like one's fire, one's electricity
abilities. Yeah,
obviously it's not fire and ice because it's
obviously they wouldn't be ice based, but they're like, there's the one that you can shoot the little things they drop, and the other one you can't. You have to avoid them.
I do feel like, just in general, the alpha and the gamma fights, there's just too many of them. I didn't have the opportunity to count how many there were in Samus Returns. I tried looking online to see if there was like a list of each type of Metroid you fight. Unfortunately, I couldn't find him. But I think you fight 14 alphas and 15 gammas in the original Metroid.
Out of a total of 40 in the game.
Yeah, no, I don't think... No, I'm talking about the original Metroid 2.
Okay. So 48.
Yeah, it's 38, wasn't it, in the original?
I thought it was 48. Whatever.
Yeah. It's
still a high percentage of the normal number.
Well, I think it probably actually, you're probably right. It's probably something like in the 40s if you include the infant Metroids. So yeah, that's probably actually right. I was thinking of the number you start the game with, but anyway, yeah, that's neither here nor there. So I'd imagine it would probably be roughly the same number for Samus Returns. Like something like 14, 15 of the first two types, and it does get repetitive. Personally, I think I'd have liked it if they'd gone with less alphas and gammas, but made them harder to make them feel more like individual bosses, and maybe tailored each one individually rather than you fighting what effectively feels like the same one multiple times.
Which they did change it up a little bit. There's like certain gammas you have to chase around.
Yeah, I didn't like that. I thought that was kind of annoying, because usually
that was a bit cheap.
Usually what they do is they give you a large area where it can run around, and there's like 3 different rooms you can fight, and you've actually got to find it. It'll run away, and then you've got to re-find it again between those 3 rooms, and it could be in any of them. And so you've got to go looking for it. I mean, it's kind of nice in a way that the fights are dynamic like that.
Yeah.
But it's still kind
so
of
it's
annoying.
not just standing there and attacking you. It will learn. It will say, "Well, I'm about to die, so I should probably retreat for a bit."
I don't know, actually. Does its health regenerate if it runs away?
I don't think it does. I think it runs away once you do a third of its health damage to it.
Yeah, I don't know. That's something we'd probably have to experiment on to know for sure. Maybe it gets like a small percentage of its health back or something. But yeah, I mean, it's a nice thing to see. And again, it's one of the newer things they have added to the game. But I actually found that kind of annoying that I had to keep chasing these goddamn things down. It's annoying enough to find them in the first place rather than having to do it multiple times. So yeah, I mean, in general, I did like the Metroid fights. You do feel like a bit of a badass when you bring them down, especially when you get to
when you use them with a melee counter, yeah.
Yeah, because when you use the melee counter on the Metroids, which didn't happen as often as I'd have liked, which I can understand, because if you get a melee counter on one of the Metroids, even on the bigger ones, you can really wail on it after that.
Yeah, you can really do considerable damage. It's good to save your super missiles for when you get those going.
Yeah. Although, I don't know, I did find... Did you die to an Omega? Because I didn't.
Well, I didn't. I felt like the spike between the Gammas and
the Zetas
was much higher than this jump from Zetas to Omegas.
Yeah, I felt that too. And I don't know, maybe it was just because by that point in the game, you had like all your equipment and you had like lots of health tanks and stuff like that.
Yeah, I felt Zetas were especially more difficult because they have that healing chest area, which I have found that super bombs do an amazing job at destroying.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
The first one is the hardest because you don't have super bombs yet.
Yeah, so yeah, in general, I think the Metroid fights are good. They're probably the best part of the game, truth be told, which makes sense.
Which is good because you're going to be doing them a lot.
Yeah, you're going to be doing them a lot. So as I said, the alphas and the gammas get a bit repetitive, but the same is said of the original Metroid 2, so, take that for whatever you will. Of course, That's not the only thing that's new in the game. There is some new things in this game, and at the same time, there really isn't. In terms of what is actually new, obviously we've mentioned the parry ability, or the melee counter, or whatever the hell it's called.
Melee counter, yeah.
And that's, obviously, as I said, it's nice to use it, but it's used too much. But then you also have the Aeon abilities, which
I mean, the Aeon abilities are helpful, but a bit unbalanced, I will say.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of weird that, like, the Aeon abilities, they're nice to have. It's not saying we wouldn't have them. They are nice to have there. Yeah, I think they are a bit unbalanced. Like, it is kind of weird that, and this is minor spoiler territory. It's not really big spoiler territory, because I'm fairly certain they list the Aeon abilities on the back of the box. So, it's not a big spoiler, but there are basically 4 Aeon abilities. The first one you get is a mapping ability, which I completely fucking
so
abused.
Many people complain about the scan pulse, which I really don't understand the hatred against. I love the scan pulse. I don't think it's any different from having like the X-ray visor from Super Metroid.
It basically is an alternate version of the X-ray visor. I actually had one of my friends who said he had never used the scan pulse, but then started complaining about getting lost. Seriously. He said, I kept getting lost in the game. I had no idea where I was going. This game's annoying. You don't get signposted often enough. I said, well, are you using the scan pulse? Oh, no, you're not supposed to use it because it's like cheating. It's not cheating!
It's not cheating. You're literally supposed to use it to get out of the first room you get it in.
Yes! Literally, the game is designed around the scan pulse. They wouldn't give you it otherwise. And I have seen other people as well who say that, like, all the Aeon abilities are basically quick win cheat buttons.
Cheat buttons?
They're not!
What?
They're so not.
You need the phase drift to get through certain puzzles. In fact, that's most of the time I've ever used the phase drift is just to solve the puzzles. There are opportunities to use it in battle, but I've never found a good one.
Yeah, the phase drift basically slows time down.
It slows time. It basically replaces the speed booster in the game.
Yeah, you don't get the speed booster in this game, and this kind of replaces it. It's the other way. Rather than Samus moving very quickly, it's everything else moves very slowly, so it just kind of reverses it. And the other two you get are what's the shield?
Lightning armor. Called the lightning armor.
It's called the lightning.
The lightning armor I found is the most useful in the game.
Yeah, especially during the bosses.
I would have lightning armor on all the time.
Yeah,
because it's just way easier to replace your Aeon than your health.
Yes, yeah, it is because you get a lot more Aeon drops. Actually, if you do a successful parry, you will get Aeon drops. So lightning armor is probably the most useful. And I will say that, what's the super beam one called?
Beam rush.
Beam rush. That's also pretty good too. That does actually do a good chunk of damage to whatever the hell you're attacking. Although
mostly I've used it for enemies that are immune otherwise.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
Like
there are some enemies that are
metallic enemies.
Yeah, there are some enemies that are completely immune to your normal beams, and you can only hurt them using this beam rush thing. Although that really only comes into
thankfully they explode into a whole bunch of Aeons,
Yeah.
so you get back pretty much whatever you spent to kill them.
I also like the fact that you can use multiple Aeon abilities at once.
Yes, that is.
It's not recommended because it drains your
it drains your Aeon like crazy,
like crazy. But you can use them at once. You don't have to pick and choose which one you're using. Which again, that's a nice little touch. So in general, the Aeon abilities, they're useful, and they do have a use. Why people are complaining about them being cheat buttons, I don't know. I think some people just aren't getting the point of them.
Yeah, because I've heard so many people complain that like the scan pulse is a crutch that I had to put in for the stupid gamers. Like, here's the thing. Going for 100% is a joy in this game, unlike something that I played very recently, which was Axiom Verge. And I've got to go off on a bit of a rant here. If you don't give players the resources in-game to find this stuff and get 100% using resources in the game, they're not going to waste their time and, like, figure it out and bomb every single... Some people may like that, might like going around and bombing walls and shit, but I have a job, I have a life, I have shit to do. I don't like having to go around and bomb every single wall looking for that last little item that the game never fucking tells you where it is. If you don't give players the resources in-game to find this stuff, they're just going to look online anyway. So you're not doing any favors to yourself by making this stuff secret. I don't know what they're trying to accomplish by providing absolutely no clues for these sort of things. They provide you the clues and resources in-game so you don't have to go online to find it, because if they don't provide it in-game, you're just going to end up doing that. I know what gamers do.
Of course, yeah.
I feel like going online to find the information is cheating, but if you use the stuff that you're given in game, that's just playing the game.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, if you think about all the best sort of Metroidvania games out there, like Metroid 3, you get the X-ray visor. In Shadow Complex, you get given the map once you reach a certain level, and you have the flashlight, which actually lets items glow in the specific color of the thing you need to destroy them.
Right.
Or in the Blind Forest, again, there's an upgrade you can buy that lets items show up on the map. So, like, all the really best Metroidvania games out there do allow people to find things easier. I've never heard anybody complaining about Ori and the Blind Forest and the upgrade that lets you see things before. So why does this one get so much flack? I don't know. I think people just have double standards.
Probably, yeah.
Gamers with double standards? What am I talking about? At the end of the day, the Aeon abilities are nice, and you should use them. Don't think for a second you should never use the Aeon abilities. If you think that they're cheats, you're not playing the game right. That's the problem. But, that being said, pretty much the Aeon abilities are the only new thing you will see in this game.
Yeah.
With one exception, which we'll get to later.
I think that's sort of the problem with the series itself, is that it really is banking way too much on nostalgia. It's like you pick up the screw attack, it's like, oh, I remember this item, this item was awesome. Or you pick up the high jump boost, it's like, hey, I remember these items. Or you pick up like the Varia suit or the Varia suit, it's like, hey, I remember this item. And you can't do that for every single item. Every single item in this game has been seen before, except for the Aeon abilities, which I think is a problem with the series itself. When was the last time we got a truly unique power-up that we did see again in a later game?
Probably the Prime series. Because they did add, you could argue the Seeker missiles in Prime 2, or then in Prime 3. To be honest, I think the one that added the most new shit was probably Metroid 3.
Yeah, because they added the grapple beam and the gravity suit and...
Yeah, so you could argue the Prime series. If not that, probably Metroid 3. And you think about how old Metroid 3 is.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, you look at Fusion, you have the ice missiles and the diffusion missiles, which are really just sort of modifications on the original.
Yeah, I mean, ice missiles, at least there was a story, like an in-game story reason for
story
that.
development, which I like the idea of the ice missiles.
Yeah,
but...
as opposed to the ice beam, which I think that actually does make a certain kind of sense. But yeah, everything in this game, with the exception of the Aeon abilities, you'll have seen it before. It's got all the classics. You do pick them up in a slightly different order, but that's just Metroid. There's always a slight difference between the order of the items in which you pick them up. That's sort of par for the course. But yeah, there is nothing else new in this game. And you're right, it is a problem with the Metroid franchise at large. It's like, the fans of the Metroid are so scared of anything new, which I think is probably one of the reasons why the Aeon abilities are hated. It's because they're new. And
possibly, yeah.
And it's getting to the point where the Metroid franchise is, because it won't let anything new in, is finding it hard to justify its existence in a gaming community that is got a whole bunch of other new, fresher Metroidvania games out there.
Yeah, Metroid is having to compete with the genre that it helped create.
Yes.
And it's losing.
Yes, it is. I mean...
which is such a weird phenomenon, where they created this idea, and then other people are doing it better than the progenitors did.
Yeah, because they're not kind of held back by this kind of rabid fan base that is scared of new ever since Other M came out. And to be honest, even Other M, like, okay, it may have sucked balls, had the worst voice acting in a video game. Well, okay, that's probably an exaggeration, but... Not
exaggerating. Worst voice acting in a Metroid game.
Yeah, only voice acting in a Metroid game, really, except...
No, Prime series had...
Well, yeah, Prime 3 had more voice acting, I suppose. Prime 3 had, I think, a good amount of voice acting.
I liked Prime 3.
Yeah, I love all the Prime trilogy. The Prime trilogy is one of the best video game trilogies ever, in my opinion. And I'm really curious what they're going to do with Prime 4. You know, it's like...
I really hope that comes off well, because that's going to get you to buy a Switch, isn't it?
That will be the game that forces me to buy a Switch, just like this was the game that forces you to buy a 3DS. Yeah, so it is one of just weird things. Like, fans are so scared of them trying something new, because the last time they tried something new, it went so badly. But if you think of other franchises, how often do they experiment with new stuff that doesn't work? I mean, okay, yeah, Zelda had Breath of the Wild, which was an amazing experiment that actually worked. How many other Zelda games have experimented and just not worked out at all? Look at the backlash that Wind Waker got because of its cartoon style. You know, that...
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you look at the last time Metroid experimented, we got Other M.
Yeah, because...
But before that, the last time Metroid experimented, we got Prime, so...
Exactly. And I remember the absolute fury that Metroid fans were in about Prime.
People were fucking furious toward Prime because, no, you do not turn Metroid into a first-person shooter. This is not fucking Halo.
No, they didn't even... They were comparing it to Doom because Halo sort of came out at roughly the same time, I think, something like that. But yeah, you know, he says they were expecting it to be like Doom or like Halo or like something else like that, rather than... Because, you know, and Nintendo kept saying, no, it's a first-person adventure. It's like, oh, no, it's not going to be an adventure. It's just going to be a horrible first-person shooter. And no, guess what, guys? It was an adventure. And now it's rated as one of the greatest video games ever made. And I think that is, in a way, I can kind of understand why Nintendo have been so scared to make a new proper Metroid game. Because the fans are fucking mental. You're all nuts.
Not only that, but Metroid has a lot more of a weight to it than other games, because when you make a new Metroid game, Metroid has always had a very strong lore, much stronger lore than anything else Nintendo has put out. Mario has really nothing major happening in it. Zelda changes the lore in every single game.
Yeah.
Star Fox, maybe.
I don't know. To be honest, they've remade the first Star Fox game so many times. I don't think there is any lore to that series anymore. I mean, I guess if you count things like Adventures and all the other ones, but this is the thing. If you think about the Star Fox series, there's only ever really been one successful Star Fox game. Two, technically. If you include the first one and then the one on the 64. All the other ones have only ever been sort of halfly successful in the Star Fox series, which again is another series that Nintendo doesn't touch very often. And they keep trying to reboot it and not getting very well with it.
So not only are you trying to make a game that stands up to one that has been so highly praised in the past, like Metroid Prime, Super Metroid, these are some of the best games in the system. You're trying to not only live up to that in terms of gameplay, but you're also trying to tie it into the lore of this world at large that I don't think a lot of people are able to do. They're not able to write something that seems to fit in with that lore. And I think that may be the problem why we haven't seen the next chapter after Fusion, and we still haven't, is the fact
they don't know what to do with it.
They don't know where to go, and they don't want to disappoint fans.
Yeah, I think that is entirely possible. I mean, it's kind of both one of those good things and bad things, because the fact that it has this consistent story and this consistent lore, and the eye for the detail in the lore is great. That's what drew...
Yeah, which is part of what made Metroid Prime so great, was because they had so much of attention to detail in this stuff, so much lore into it, so much like the logs you see where they're trying to backwards engineer Samus's power suit and it ends up like crippling them. This has nothing to do with gameplay, but it adds so much richness to the universe.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's one of the things that makes Metroid so popular, but as you say, it also kind of hurts the series as well, because it means you've got to write around what's already there. You can't just create new stuff easily. And maybe that's why we don't see much in the way of new power-ups or anything like that, because again, they're scared of destroying the lore by adding in a power-up that doesn't make any sense.
I mean, although you do see that same sort of thing in Legend of Zelda as well, where it doesn't have the same sort of lore shackles that Metroid does, but you still don't see that many creative items in Legend of Zelda either.
Yeah,
you do get them much more often than Metroid, but we get Zelda games much more often than Metroid too.
Yeah, that's true.
I think the most recent truly unique item, I think, was like the ball and chain from Twilight Princess.
Yeah, and even technically that was like a
sort of like a hammer, sort of like a hook shot.
Well, I was thinking it's an item that enemies have used before. It's just not an item that Link has used before.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, even in Breath of the Wild, you'd kind of seen all the items before, everything there.
Yeah, you had like the bomb and
you had the bombs, ice. You had the well, I suppose the ice
block. The ice block is sort of like the Cave of Burna.
Yeah.
Or Cane of Samaria, whatever it was.
I can't remember which one's which in that game. And of course you had the slow time. Well, you had the time stopper thing.
It's kind of new, but yeah.
Before. So anyway, yeah, it is one of those weird things that like we both want new and we want old at the same time. And
personally, I would love to see a Breath of the Wild style Metroid game where you just have Samus in this massive open world. You fly the ship around and you explore different planets, and she's a bounty hunter. Give her missions to do. She's a bounty hunter. She hunts bounties. Come on.
Yeah. You see, I don't know. You see, that feels like it's destroying the Metroid formula too much. I mean, like, would you have to go out, hunt bounties to get money to pay for upgrades? I mean...
Well, the upgrades would be separate to that. Like, you would... Maybe that would be the way that you increase your health and everything. I don't know.
No, I don't know either. But anyway, we're getting a little off topic here.
A little off topic,
I can't even remember where this tangent started now.
There are a few other things that did bug me about this game that I want to go into very briefly.
Go on then.
Before we go on to, I guess, what we really did like about this game. The different stations that you use to travel around and restore your health, these really could use better differentiation. Because you have the ones that restore your health and the ones that restore your ammo. And the two stations look almost identical to each other.
They are identical, they just have a different color. One is purple, one is red.
Also, one is facing left, one is facing right.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's not like the colors have a high contrast like blue and orange. It's red and purple.
Yeah.
So every time you look at it, it's like, wait, is that a red one? Or, oh no, that's a red one. I need to restore my health. I need to find a purple one.
Yeah.
So they could have really used something much better than that. But even then, like the Aeon stuff, you just pick up an orb and you restore your Aeon. I don't know why they couldn't have done that with the health and ammo stuff.
I think it's because, like, again, previous games always did that thing where you
went to a refill station, yeah. Because the save points don't restore your stuff anymore.
No.
That was interesting that they changed that.
I think, again, that's like the original Metroid 2?
Like the original, yeah. They had separate stations and they had like these podiums. I felt they should have brought back the save podiums. That was really cool because you stand on this thing that's higher than the ground around it.
It's
because like even the save podiums, they look very similar to the teleport stations.
Yeah, they do a bit. Although I will say there's more of a difference between the teleport and the save than there are between the health and ammo regen.
Yeah.
You know, generally a thing of if you just take a second to look, but you shouldn't have to take a second. They should be just
it should be a millisecond.
In there. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that's like a massive problem with the game. It's
not a problem, but it is sort of a sign that they didn't know what they were doing as much as they should have.
No.
They should have known to make these things better. They should have known to make these look different.
One of the things that kind of annoyed me was the fact that on the map screen, you've got this sort of the general area map, and then you can go into a kind of a world map where you can then select all the areas. They didn't name the areas. I know that is an incredibly petty thing to complain about, but
I sort of see it as SR388 is sort of which again goes against the lore thing, but it's this sort of undeveloped planet that the Federation doesn't really know about as well. They know it exists, but they don't know much about it. They haven't known enough about it to give it a name and give the areas different identities like they know with Zebas. But which is why it has a number distinction like SR388 instead of an actual name. So the areas themselves are just numbered, which again doesn't really help at all, because like in area 6, wait, is that the area with the one thing or the thing with the other thing? It doesn't really help. If these did have names, then that would really help. But yeah, I can see why they didn't, just for the lore reasons.
Well, the thing is that
but again, if we're trying to follow lore, what's the deal with the Chozo seals?
Yeah, well, it's this thing. What's the deal with the Chozo seals? Also, all the different areas are connected by elevators. Now, I get that elevators are like a Metroid trope. It's a thing. It's an established thing. Elevators are in Metroid games. But again, this is supposed to be like an uncharted planet. I get that there are like ruins and stuff, but I always like the original Metroid 2 styles of the idea of it's all one big giant cave that has been like tunneled out, and you're just exploring things that have been connected by it. That it felt more natural, because this is...
I always felt that that Metroid 2, the map resembled like an ant colony.
I think that was kind of the point, because it was supposed to be like a Metroid hive, sort of.
And then you have the queen at the end, exactly.
With the queen at the far end. But the thing that annoyed me, I think, about the area things is that you still have the first area is still called, like, the landing zone or the landing area or something like that.
It's called the surface.
Was it just called the surface? Anyway, the first one had a name. And then it was just like, oh, no, then it's area 1, area 2, area 3, area 4. And it's just like, well, okay, you couldn't have thought up names for these things. I get it's supposed to be unmapped and they don't have areas, but... you couldn't have, like, given them names, like, maybe once you've explored a certain amount. Like, oh, maybe Samus gives this area a name.
If they were already going to screw up the lore, they could have easily put in stuff like you find information about it and you see what the area was called.
Yeah.
And then you find like a map or something, and it's like, oh, here, this area is called this.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been, I think, a little better, because as you say, they've already kind of screwed up the lore a little bit. But, yeah, I mean, again, we're kind of going into
minor nitpick.
This is the problem with the game.
We were talking about minor nitpicks here, so
yeah, I was gonna say, this is kind of the problem with the game. The game only really has things that you could consider minor nitpicks. There are no major problems with this game. It is a very well-made, very robust and enjoyable experience, but there are just so many little nitpicks scattered throughout that we kind of have to bring them up. And that's kind of one of the unfortunate things about the game.
Another one, just like getting through the menus seemed like it was a bit needlessly unintuitive, because you would have to advance through the menu, you have to hit A, and then A, and then A, but then you get to the end, and you hit A and nothing happens. You have to hit B to finally close the menu. It's the tiniest thing, but it's really annoying that you have to keep paying attention. A, it's not, B.
Yeah, that can be a bit annoying, because as I said, it's about the little nitpicks that we ran into, because those are the only real problems with the game. Any more?
Yeah, the screw attack. The screw attack isn't instant kill anymore.
Well,
it almost is, but there's certain enemies that just does a considerable amount of damage to them, and you have to screw attack them twice to kill them. It almost makes it feel like Sonic the Hedgehog, where you're spinning and bouncing on them. It turns Samus into Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh, that's a lovely mental image. You see, I didn't mind that as much. I kind of made it feel like they didn't want the screw attack to be completely overpowered, because in previous Metroid games, the screw attack was just one-hit kill on everything, and like, I get that
except for Metroids, which you just kind of bounce off of. Now it doesn't even do that. You just take damage.
Yeah, you can't screw attack against Metroids, which, again, it kind of makes sense, I think, from a gameplay standpoint, but I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence about that one. I kind of, on one hand, yeah, it's annoying that some enemies take 2 attacks. In fact, there's some enemies that you just can't hurt.
Yeah, you can't hurt them at all. They hurt you. or for some reason they like snap you out of your screw attack.
Yeah.
Like those like robot laser dudes did it, which look just like the robots from earlier in the game, but they're slightly different, so you can't do it on them.
Yeah, exactly.
You encounter them later in the game, so
there's an orange version and then there's a kind of a black colored version, and it's like, oh look, yeah, they're totally different.
Yeah, it's
enemies.
a completely different creature.
Yeah, totally different. Yeah, so I'm on the fence about that one. I didn't mind it. I kind of saw it as okay. It's nice the screw attack isn't like an instant win button, because that's
what the lightning armor is for.
Yeah, that's what the lightning armor is for.
I think that's it for negatives. We could go into what we really liked about the game.
I like the sense of exploration.
The sense of exploration was good because you are searching for these creatures, but then I don't know, it felt like it could have been a bit better balanced, because it feels like you've explored an area as much as you can, then you go over to another area and it's like, oh, here we go. And I guess the fact that you can go back to the Chozo seal at any time and you deposit your DNA and it tells you where the next Metroid is, that's very helpful.
Oh, I didn't know you could do that. I never did that. I just kept exploring until I'd been everywhere. Which okay. I guess that's a nice thing that you can actually do that you can choose to either explore manually or use the Chozo seal to help you find things. I think that's...
Which again goes into the fact that you give players the option and the ability to use in-game resources to find where to progress.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's good. So yeah, the sense of exploration is good. The controls, although there are some niggles, they do feel pretty good once you get used to them.
My hands were cramping up during the fights, during the final fights, like against the Queen and everything. My hands were cramping up something crazy because you have to hold down the L button to aim in directions and stuff and get the perfect shots off. I was actually looking into getting like special grips for my 3DS just to avoid having to do that so much.
It doesn't bother me. Maybe we've probably got different hand structure, or maybe I'm just used to holding like a DS and a 3DS a lot more because I've had one for a lot longer than you, so maybe I'm just like more used to it or something.
But again, that could have been mitigated by having an option to turn on toggle for missiles and stuff.
Yeah, perhaps. What else did I like? Well, what did you like? Because I've said 2 already.
Well, when we were talking about how we haven't seen anything new in a while, we did get a new ability, which I don't think has an official name yet, but the community is calling it the Spider Spark.
Yeah, it's one of those abilities. It's a bit like the beam combo abilities from Metroid 3.
From Metroid Prime, or even just Shine Sparking in Super Metroid, which... It's not necessary to complete the game, but it's necessary for 100%.
Yes. And it's one of these things that's not like advertised. Nothing tells you about this. I mean, in Metroid 3, obviously the Shine Spark was, you got told like the wall jump and the Shine Spark by the animals.
The Datoras, yeah.
There's no animal to teach you this.
Which would have been interesting to see. It would have been fun.
Yeah, it might have been.
We get a new creature added to the game. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that might have been cool, but I guess I can understand why they probably didn't think to do something like that. Yeah, there is a new ability that... should we tell them how you do it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, well, you have to... Once you get the power bombs, which is the last item you get in the game. Spoiler alert for the record.
Yeah.
We really shouldn't say spoiler alert after we've already spoiled the thing. That is actually really annoying. I always hate people who do that, and then I do it myself. And yeah, so I shouldn't do that. You have to, once you got the power bombs, that's the last item you get. And then if you lay a power bomb down and whilst you're using the spider ball, it will literally send you rocketing right across the screen. And you just keep going until you stop.
Yeah, you'll keep going until you hit a wall. And it's a good way to get through a lot of areas really quickly if there's a long enough hallway.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are certain areas that were designed around using this, because I found the power bombs are not all that useful as weapons. They're more useful as tools.
Yeah, that is
true. The enemies that they would be useful against, like the Queen or the later Metroids, they don't do anything against them. And they do help to destroy the Zeta's shields, but other than that, no, there's really no purpose to them.
I'm pretty sure they destroy the Omega's body armor as well. I think you're thinking of the Omegas because you don't get them when you're fighting the Zetas.
Right, yeah. Okay.
But they do help you kill the Queen, of course, because you can do the thing where you roll into her mouth. And
I had a feeling that was in the game, but I've never actually found out when the best time to use it is.
Yeah. Well, once you attack her, she kind of goes into that sort of state where she's kind of stunned.
Stun phase where her mouth is open?
Yeah, where her mouth is open. And if you rush up to her and hit her a couple of times, you get that grapple thing, her tongue comes out.
Right.
If you pull on that, she flops down on the floor, and you have like a couple of seconds to roll into a ball, and you glide down her mouth, and you go into her core, and you can lay a power bomb in there. It takes it doesn't actually kill her. What it does is it takes off like half the health for the next phase of the fight.
Right.
So it makes it easier. It makes the boss fight more manageable. Although you do take damage while you're in there, so that's understandable. I think you did in the original Metroid, didn't you?
Yeah, you could use that in the original Metroid, and you do it in Other M.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it is keeping the lore true, but the fact that I've always just used that time to just shoot missiles into her mouth.
Yeah,
because I have grappled her like that.
And I will say, I kind of like the fact that you could still use the Ice Beam against even the evolved Metroid forms. That was an interesting choice, because the original one, it was only missiles that could hurt, like, alphas and above. You still had to use the Ice Beam on the infants and then missiles to blast them after that. But you could still use, even normal beams, you could still use them against...
Yeah, it deals a little bit of damage, but yeah, Ice Beam, it's good to use the Ice Beam if you ever run out of missiles, which does happen occasionally if you're not paying attention.
Yeah, if you're not like going out of your way to collect every missile upgrade, you will find yourself running out of missiles if you're not careful. So
I do like how this game it gave the grapple beam a reason to exist even after getting the space jump. Because again, like you could use it in combat against the Metroids and other bosses, and it also lets you open up little shortcuts by destroying blocks.
Yes, that is true.
Because like in other games like Super Metroid, the space jump is just, once you get the space jump, it just completely supersedes needing the wall jumping or even the grapple beam, or even the spider ball in many cases.
Yeah, because they use the grapple beam for like horizontal and vertical movement, really, sometimes. Especially in like, if you have a very thin corridor that you can't space jump up, sometimes you'll be able to use the grapple beam. And you also use it for like puzzle solving and things like that. So yeah, it is nice that they gave it more use, I will say that.
Well, you want to do the final thoughts and then we can go into spoilers?
Okay, yeah, we could do that if you want. Okay.
So yeah, like, overall, I think Samus Returns is a perfectly passable Metroid game.
Yeah.
And it has a few niggling flaws, quite a number of niggling flaws that they do add up to prevent it from reaching greatness. But even if they were ironed out, it seems like there's something missing here to put it on like the true pantheon of great Metroidvanias. Yeah,
it's a weird thing is that this game is good. It is very good, but it does fall shy of greatness. I want to say it's that really annoying, hard to define thing that a lot of really great games have.
I guess it feels like they didn't. It's just sort of a straightforward game. If you look at Metroid Prime, it would have been just fine on its own, but then they added in all these little touches, like the little things that add to the lore of the series and stuff like that. And it feels like there's not enough added to this game on top of just being a straightforward game.
Yeah,
I think that might be it.
It also might be, and this is a maybe the people who made it, maybe they didn't get Metroid. They wanted to do a Metroid, but maybe they didn't understand what it was that made Metroid
so great.
Yeah.
From what I understand, Mercury Steam, they originally came to Nintendo with the idea of remaking Fusion.
Which is an odd choice.
Yeah.
Like, of all the Metroid games, Fusion is one that probably doesn't need a remake. Because the Game Boy Advance games, Fusion and Zero Mission, they still hold up very well.
Yeah, they've aged fine. I would say the only one that may sort of need a remake is Super Metroid, and even that is really pushing it.
Yeah, I mean, Super Metroid, I don't know. I feel like
it's a bit floaty, but it still feels just fine. Yeah, it feels like a perfectly fine
I feel
Metroid
like
game.
It's just about starting to show its age, Super Metroid is. There's just a few little niggling things that you think, well, yeah, that could have been a bit better, or maybe they should have done this instead. But yeah, Metroid 2 was, I think, the game that needed a remake, which is why you got two of them, but we'll talk about that in another one, of course. So there is just that feeling like it's almost a paint-by-numbers Metroid game.
Yeah, because I guess it is sort of the fact that you knew exactly what was going to happen. Sort of.
Yeah,
You sort of knew exactly how the game was going to progress.
Yeah, exactly.
If you have played Metroid 2, you knew you were going to start encountering alphas and then gammas and then zetas, then omegas down the line, and you knew you were going to get that one spot where you fight one enemy and then you go flip around and then you end up fighting your first omega, and then you get to the queen, and then before you get to the queen, the Metroid activity skyrockets and you have a bunch of regular larva Metroids to fight. Which, if you've played Metroid 2, that's not a spoiler.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you've played the original Metroid 2, even if you haven't played the original Metroid 2, you probably know about it. You know, there's a lot of things about Metroid 2 and Samus Returns that are kind of public knowledge. Let's be honest here. So yeah, I think in general, this is a very, very good game, and it is nice. I kind of feel like I want to say, although it's not maybe as great as it could have been, or maybe as great as we were expecting it to be, I do feel Metroid is back.
Yeah.
We're
finally getting Metroid games again.
Yeah. It's like, Metroid is back, and it's good back. It's not bad back. You know, it's not Federation Force, or because there's people who got Federation Force just because they wanted more Metroid. Yeah, I wasn't that desperate. Yeah, I don't own Federation Force. I don't know if I will
may pick it up just as a formality because it's the only game left on my list.
I might buy it secondhand, that way I don't have to give any money to Nintendo for it.
Right.
I don't know. I'm on the fence about whether... I mean, I did pick up Other M, because, I mean, even despite its problems, Other M is still okay.
Other M has some good things about it.
Yeah.
Overall, it's not very good, but it has some good ideas in it.
Yeah, there were some good parts of Other M, and to be honest, I think Other M in the hands of other people might have been better. I don't specifically want to say that Team Ninja are rubbish, but considering their most popular game is, Dead or Alive Beach Volleyball, just so you can watch
the Dead or Alive series in general, but yeah.
Yeah, I think their most popular game is the one where you watch women's tits juggle up and down, you know. Anyway, you can probably cut
in their defense, the Dead or Alive series is respected as an actual fighting game as well, like a deep, legitimate fighting game, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of fighting games, so that doesn't really do much for me.
So I guess those are your final thoughts on Samus Returns?
Yeah, final thoughts on Samus Returns. It's a very good game. Metroid is back. I am 100% looking forward to Prime 4, presumably next year at some point. I don't know if we got an official release date on that or not yet. So yeah, that's my final thoughts. Yours?
I pretty much said what I had to say. It has a few minor flaws that do unfortunately add up, but even if they were ironed out, it wouldn't be something spectacular, but it's still a perfectly passable Metroid game. If it is your first Metroid game...
You could do worse.
I think this is a very good entryway into the series, because it does kind of give this taste that there's a lot more lore to be experienced in the game.
Yeah.
So I think this would work very well as your first Metroid game, because you would get you interested in a lot of the other games in the series.
Yeah, I would hope so. You know, from there, you'd probably want to see, what happened before this? So you'd go and look at Zero Mission, and then you'd want to say, what happened after this?
Then you look at Metroid Fusion, and then what happened between this? You look at Metroid Prime, yeah.
Yeah, and all that other stuff. So, I think if this is your first Metroid game, it's a good one to start with. It's not the best, but it's definitely a good starting point. I would agree with that.
So that will do it for non-spoilers. So
I mean, we've had a few minor spoilers, but they are minor spoilers. Now we're getting into the big spoilers here.
The unforgivable ones. The unforgivable curses.
Yeah, these, there isn't a huge amount of really bad spoilers.
Yeah, there's not a huge amount, but there is stuff that is specific to Samus Returns.
Yeah.
So, major spoilers past this point. If you don't want to hear any, turn it off now. 3, 2, 1. Ridley is back.
Yeah, fucking spoiler alert. What they do is, after you've beaten the Queen, oddly enough, I did think it was a bit weird, because throughout
I thought this was really cool, but I knew this was happening because I recognized them as soon as I encountered them out in the field.
Yeah.
You get the baby as a power-up.
Yeah, the baby basically acts as like a new power-up, and you can continue to explore the map after you've actually got the baby as like a partner.
Which, if I were remaking this game, that's exactly what I would have done.
Yeah.
Because you encounter these like diamond crystal things at the end of the game, and you never encounter them anywhere else in the game. So it's they kind of come out of nowhere. But then you realize that the Metroid baby can eat them. So it's like, okay, that helps me get through, because you can't get through there without it, but there was no way to get through without it anyway, so...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't avoid the egg hatching anyway in Metroid. Can you avoid
I think you can.
Can you?
You can jump over it.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Fair enough. But
then you come to a wall of the diamonds, you can't get through them.
Of course. And so you start seeing them just scattered. They're not, like, done a lot.
No, but they're in a few areas where they're in a few areas where it makes it easier to solve puzzles, and a few where they're required. Yeah. So and you will go back with the baby to get 100% completion.
Yeah, because the game doesn't end when you've got the baby. I mean, here's the thing. I honestly thought the game was going to go full zero mission on us. I thought we were going to have a whole new area to explore. Like, something was going to happen. Like, the space pirates were going to show up at the very end, and they were going to kidnap the baby, and you'd have to go chasing it off to some other location, and it would be like a bit like Zero Mission. Because one of my friends actually said that technically the Zero Mission Samus was in the game because you see her during the death animation. And he wondered if maybe they were gonna use the Zero Mission model and have an actual Zero Suit Samus section to the game. Now, obviously, that doesn't happen, for the record.
No, I think that would have been rehashing a bit too much.
Yeah.
But instead, we get a boss battle against Ridley in this massive area right in front of the ship as he's trying to steal the Metroid baby.
Yeah, he basically shows up fucking out of nowhere, really.
Yeah, out of nowhere.
There's no prelude to it.
There is sort of a prelude if you understand game design.
Well,
because you're picking up all these extra items that have no purpose if you've already defeated the final boss.
That's
the only conclusion you can jump to is, I haven't completed the final boss yet. There's going to be something else.
And, I mean, on the one hand, I do like that they included that extra boss as like a, hey, surprise, final boss, and like, you know, all the calm weather's turned into all like dark and stormy. And
yeah, that was a nice
There's
touch.
a giant fucking tornado that goes round in the background during one part of the boss fight, I noticed. And it looks really good. And the boss fight is hard. Like,
oh yeah, it's
Ridley
really hard. I think I died like 10 times fighting him.
Yeah, I died like, I can't remember how many times I tried, like 3, 4, 5 times, something like that. It's a hard fight.
And even with 100% item completion,
yeah.
he is hard.
He is hard. And I mean,
I did beat him on hard mode without getting everything, which is...
Really? Oh.
Yeah, I beat him on hard mode without getting 100%.
Oh, well, that's fair enough. Yeah, and it's a good fight, and it's a nice sort of climax. One of the interesting things they do is and this is weird because of the amount of lore they technically destroyed, they actually add a couple of nice little connections that technically add in to both Metroid Other M and Metroid 4.
Metroid, this game ties into a lot of the other games. Yeah. It ties into Metroid Other M, it ties into Zero Mission, it ties into Fusion and Metroid Prime.
As well as Metroid 3,
and
obviously.
as well as Super Metroid.
Well, the Metroid 3 connection was obvious, because they are literally direct sequels. One game goes into the next. But how it connects to Metroid Other M is that during the Ridley fight, the baby actually goes out of its way to attack Ridley and help Samus kill it, which kind of increases the connection between Samus and the baby, you know, the baby.
Right. Which, I mean, you could just sort of glean that from Metroid 2 and Metroid 3, where the fact that the baby has imprinted on Samus as its mother, so it is going to, if it sees this thing as a threat to its mother, it's going to help her, which is exactly why it attacked Mother Brain at the end of Super Metroid.
Yeah, exactly. So it kind of takes that as like a natural sort of step in that regard, that happens. And then, of course, at the very end of the game, like a post-credit sequence shows an X-Parasite in full 3D, actually, which was rather nice. Attacking and taking over one of the creatures on the planet, which I kind of like, I expected that.
As soon as you saw that Horno, it was like, okay, I see exactly where this is going.
Yeah, exactly. So that was kind of happened. But one of the things it does is, because you have the Ridley fight on SR388, you basically kill Ridley, I think. Because, I mean, you're never sure if you kill...
I don't think he does die, because they would have, like, had him disintegrate like every other enemy does.
Yeah, so whether he's, like, dead or just unconscious or something like that, it's not explicitly said, because Ridley... I don't know, I've always felt that, like, every single Ridley you fight is just a clone. There's, like, some master Ridley
either
thing.
A clone or just, like, a cybernetic enhancement, or just, like, he's brought back to life.
But the thing is, if that body of Ridley remains on SR388, it explains why Ridley's body is in the BSL on Metroid 4, because you encounter that frozen Ridley that has no real explanation for why it's there. It's just there. But if his body was left on SR388 after that fight, it's entirely possible that it was found, transported up to the BSL, and put in cold storage, where the X then infected it.
But if he is left on SR388 after the fight, then who's the one that's attacking the station at the beginning of Super Metroid?
Well, that's my clone theory.
Right.
I think that Ridley died, and it's just like a dead body kind of thing. And then there's another Ridley that attacks the station in 3. I don't know. This is the thing with Ridley, because you fight him so many times.
There are at least 2 of them in the world.
There have to be, surely.
No, there is at least 2, because there's the one you fight and then the one from Other End, which you actually see evolve.
I suppose, yeah, that's technically true. I don't know. It's hard to say exactly, because you kill Ridley so many times, and you do actually kill him. That's the one part of the canon they haven't really explained very well. Other than to say that, like, either it's a clone, or maybe Ridley is like a species and they just do like a brain imprint on it or something like that. Or maybe there's some other explanation we don't have yet. I don't know. That part of the lore doesn't actually have a set explanation for it yet, so we are welcome to theorize.
Well, his presence in this game is at least way more appropriate than Phantoon in Other M.
Oh, yeah.
Because Phantoon just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean,
he has no reason to be in that game.
Yeah, he's not there. That is literally just fan service. That is there for no other reason than, oh, look,
fan service spelled with a PH.
Yeah. Fucking hell. We've been doing this way too long. So yeah, the Ridley fight, it does also come out of nowhere, kind of like the Phantom one, but at least there's a reason for Ridley to be on the planet. He's clearly there to find more Metroids, and he just happens, either he knew Samus was there.
Like, hey, thanks for bringing it to me.
Yeah. I mean, Because obviously there's not really any story or lore or anything like that done in the game. It's mostly just Samus wandering around. It's hard to know exactly why Ridley's there, but hey, he's there, and it's a nice, very cool final boss fight.
I felt it went on a bit too long, because there's like 5 phases to it.
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be like a final big climactic fight, so I guess that's just how they went with it.
It probably would have been fine to just do 3 or maybe 4 just as a straw, because 3 is usually the magic number in these games, so if you really want to surprise someone, go 4. But 5 is like, okay, really?
Yeah, I suppose. But
because again, at the end of the 3rd phase, you don't start getting Aeon back either.
Yeah, that is actually kind of weird on how that works. It's like, you actually seemingly kill him at least twice during that fight. Like, there'll be a cutscene where he'll, like, fall down, and you think, hey, I've done... Oh, no, he's...
Because, like, every time you defeat him after the first 2 phases, he'll drop out enough Aeon to completely refill you, even at 100%. But then, which I just used Lightning Armor for. So, basically, you want to save your resources during the first 2 phases, and then use all your resources at the end to kill him.
Yeah.
When I finally beat him on hard mode, it was with a melee counter, and then I just I unloaded every single one of my super missiles into him, because I found the best way to fight him is to save your super missiles for the end.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think that's fair. Before that, you just use like charge beams or something like
charge beam, and then just spam lasers at him the whole time.
Yeah, that's fine. And even sort of beyond Ridley being an extra boss, there was like one extra boss that didn't appear in the original. I mean, if you think about the original Metroid 2, there's only one boss other than the Metroids.
Arachnus,
which is Arachnus. He's obviously...
Arachnus' battle was a bit underwhelming, honestly.
Yeah.
You don't even use bombs against him, which was sort of the entire purpose of Arachnus, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a weird one. The original Arachnus boss, that you can only use bombs.
I never beat him the first time. I got through the entire game without the spider ball.
Well, the jump ball.
Or the spring ball,
Well, it's not like a necessary item. It is optional.
It is very helpful, though.
Yeah, it's massively useful.
Otherwise, you have to bomb jump your way through everything.
But the other boss this game throws in is a kind of giant drilling machine.
He's called the Diggernaut.
That's an appropriate name, actually.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where Samus activates it halfway through the game, and then it disappears, and then it comes back later to, like, attack you.
Yeah, it starts, like, there's a chase sequence with it, which I thought was a really interesting addition.
Yeah, it's like, really cool, but also a bit annoying. It's got that problem of a chase sequence where it's really cool, but then you realize, because you don't know what the fuck you're doing, you know you're gonna die, and you have to kind of learn the sequence of moves.
You have to learn exactly what's coming up and how to get through, because there's certain fuck you moments where where you chose the wrong path, so you fall down.
Yeah, that is actually really fucking annoying. But it was a nice addition, actually. It sort of did help to make things a bit different, because you just go into an area and then all of a sudden it's like, hello, you're gonna die now. And then he disappears again for a bit and then comes back as like an actual boss.
As an actual boss, which I really like the Diggernaut fight. It has a lot of different phases to it, and then the scene at the end is just amazing.
Oh yeah, when you finally beat the thing and he drops the power up because he's like stolen the power bombs, and you pick it up and he just gets back up to look at you, and Samus doesn't even look, just points the gun and fires in his face. And I thought,
just blows his fucking face off, and it's like, that's our girl.
Yeah, that's
Samus.
See. That is fucking Samus. There you go. That's it. That's brilliant. And so there were nice little moments like that. I mean, they do a little characterization of Samus during the cutscenes, but there aren't that many cutscenes. I think there's like a grand total of about 10, maybe 15 minutes of cutscene in the whole game.
If that.
Yeah, if that, really. I mean, you'll probably struggle to fill 10 minutes, but so yeah, just in general. So those are kind of the big spoilers. I can't think of any others really that we could talk about.
No, I mean, because like the Diggernaut, I had that spoiled for me because I saw a boss battle against it. So like as soon as I saw it appearing in the background, I was like, oh, there's this guy.
Yeah, that's a bit unfortunate. Yeah, the Diggernaut. I mean, you kind of suspect that there's gonna be the fight with this thing once you start. When you activate it, you think, okay, this thing's clearly gonna come back, and it does twice. But yeah, the Ridley boss fight comes out of fucking nowhere. Like, you reach your ship at the end, and he's just fucking running at you. He is going like full pelt out of the background in order to just get the Metroid baby away from you, you know? You can kind of feel it coming, but you still don't know what it is. And that's the good thing about it, I
feel of all the possible bosses they could have done, the only thing that I could maybe think is maybe some sort of Chozo creature. So it's like some Chozo robot or statue.
Like a
Chorizo,
Chorizo?
like a giant Chorizo or something. That's the only other thing that I could think could maybe work thematically. But other than that, yeah, Ridley's really the only way that they would go.
Yeah, which technically means that Ridley's appeared in like every fucking Metroid game now, I think. It appears in 1, now appears in 2, appears in 3, appears in 4, appears in... He doesn't appear in Prime 2, actually, thinking about it. He doesn't appear in Prime 2. So not every Metroid game, but yeah, it just appears in almost every Metroid game, which is just weird. I suppose technically doesn't appear in Hunters either, but
I don't think he appears in Federation Force. Actually, I don't know.
Well, I don't count Federation Force as canon, so I think it actually is canon, but I'm not sure about that. It's not like main canon. I think it's like side canon.
I mean, I wouldn't be against the idea of introducing the Federation soldiers in terms of lore, because they did sort of do that in Other M, but we hadn't gotten a new Metroid game at that point, so please, guys. It's just not what we wanted to see. But again, that's getting off topic again.
Yeah, it's completely off topic.
Yeah, I think we're just about finished here.
Yeah, we have gone on so fucking long about this.
Like, almost an hour and a half now.
Yeah, almost an hour and a half. I mean, it'll get trimmed down in recording, but Jesus Christ.
So, yeah, that will do it for this Gamers Without Borders review of Samus Returns. And if you want a comparison between Samus Returns and AM2R, which we did briefly touch on, but I think that's enough of a topic to be on its own video. That's going to be over on Oi's channel, so we're going to have a link in the description and an annotation on the screen, or a end screen, whatever you're going to call it. And we will talk to you folks another time.
Yep, thanks for listening to our inane ramblings for an hour and whatever.
So take care, everybody.
See ya.